In 1937, 16-year-old aspiring saxophonist Charlie Parker steps on stage with a group of musicians at the Reno Club in Kansas City, Missouri. The evening starts off well enough. Young Parker playing a rendition of Honeysuckle Rose, a jazz standard composed by pianist Fats Waller only 8 years prior.
Every honeybee feels jealousy when they see you out with me. Don't blame them, goodness knows. Honeysuckle Rose.
However, like any young artist, Parker is a work in progress. His playing lacks discipline, his skills underdeveloped. Although inexperienced, he manages to find his footing amongst the more seasoned players. However, when Parker attempts to improvise, he gets tangled up in the chord changes. Joe Jones, the band's drummer, stops. He removes a cymbal from his drum kit and flings it at Parker's feet. He leaves the club that night, trailed by taunting. Consequently, Parker retreats from the jazz circuit, isolating himself from friends and family. He rents a rundown cottage in the remote woods of the Ozarks, burying himself in his practice, 15 hours a day for 1 year, utilizing a tactic known in the jazz community as woodshedding. Texas-based saxophonist Paul Klamperer describes the woodshed as, quote, the place where you work out the techniques that form the foundation of your improvisational ability, unquote. He further elaborates on the concept. The term woodshedding in jazz means more than just practicing. It is a recognition of the need to sequester oneself and dig into the hard mechanics of the music before you can come back and play with a group in public. There's something philosophical, almost religious about the term. The musical treasures of jazz are not easily accessed. You have to dig deep into yourself, discipline yourself, become focused on the music and your instrument before you can unlock the treasure chest. At the end of Parker's sabbatical, he emerges with a new persona, a new style, one sharpened by relentless practice, forged in the shadows of solitude. A style based on the old jazz standards of yesterday that will become the foundation for the jazz musicians of tomorrow. And with that, in 1939, 19-year-old Charlie Parker makes his way up to Harlem, New York to start a new life. In 1993, several miles away from Harlem in Long Island, New York, a 21-year-old who calls himself Zev Love X watches his life fall apart. His hip-hop group, KMB, disbands after the death of his fellow group member and younger brother, DJ Sub Rock. The group began their journey back in 1988, and by 1990, after connecting with third bass member MC Search, Zev secured a guest spot on the group's seminal hip-hop single, The Gas Face.
Gas face can either be a smile or a smirk when a pair's a monkey wrench to work one's clockwork. Perkin is good to the rim of my cup. Don't tempt me, you're empty, so fill her up.
Disillusioned by his brother's passing, Zev wanders the streets of Manhattan, homeless. Eventually, he migrates down south to Atlanta, Georgia. There, he retreats into hiding, swearing vengeance against the same industry that so badly deformed him. In 1997, a figure emerges from the shadows. He returns to New York City, taking the stage at the New York Poets Cafe, his face obscured by only a pair of black tights.
I used to capitalize, but never caught those drops. Whole life like 40 kill tight, barbarize. Snap, stick around, come through, niggas down. Pop out, get those full cycle, stick around.
And when he reemerges, he bears a new mask, one which closely resembles that of Marvel Comics supervillain, Dr. Doom. This video is a story of struggle, specifically the struggle of overcoming a traumatic event. It's a tale of trauma which acts as a catalyst for creative growth, as well as the victory an artist feels when he truly comes into his own, doing the heavy lifting to elevate his talent to a higher plateau. Charlie Parker and MF Doom, two influential figures in the world of music, although separated by time, are connected through their respective talents, each one influencing a bevy of artists during their lifetime and even beyond the grave. Masterclass.com breaks down Parker's style of jazz into 3 distinct categories, all of which can be found in the music of MF Doom. Number 1, fast tempo. Charlie Parker played at a rapid speed without sacrificing execution. His ability to play as his mind created was an innate talent he spent years perfecting and developing. Number 2, innovation. His chord substitutions and use of passing chords were very unusual for the time, giving him an asymmetrical approach to rhythm.
In 1939, after returning to the jazz scene in New York, Charlie Parker was playing Cherokee in a jam session with guitarist William Biddy Fleet when he hit upon a method for developing his solos that enabled one of his main musical innovations. He realized that the 12 semitones of the chromatic scale can lead melodically to any key, breaking some of the confines of simpler jazz solo.
Number 3, interpolation. Parker's recordings often feature borrowed chord progressions from jazz standards, which helped him create original compositions, inventing new harmonic and rhythmic combinations. Doom possessed a rapid-fire flow, but not like that of Tech Nine Twister or even Busta Rhymes. But he did know how to incorporate a collage of words into a single bar without losing control of his cadence. His style of rhyming undoubtedly influenced by artists like Rakim.
Soon you start to suffer, the tune will get rougher. When you start to stutter, that's when you had enough of fighting it'll make you choke. You can't provoke, you can't cope, you should have broke because I ain't no joke.
And Big Daddy Kane.
Inventor to enter, run those questions not divided, so there's no need to censor. Kids wanna peep it, but you wanna beep it. What? I feel like slapping a sticker on your chill.
What allowed Doom to incorporate more complex flows and wordplay into his lyrics was that he understood the importance of basic melodies. Compare this clip of Zev Love X on KMD's 1990 single Peach Fuzz versus Doom's rhythmic patterns on 2003's Lick Upon, and you'll see the subtle but obvious progression.
The hairs of my chinny chin chin, got many plus plenty. String by string, I think I count like 20. If you loan me an ear, I'm returning with interest. If not, I'll simply twist your wrist, so listen up.
Confirmation of your worst fears. Ever since his first years, had a thirst for beers. Back from the future, it'll make you more soberer. And brought back a long list of fakers who crossed over. I'm like, fuck it, bubble baller. Catch him up at Bob's show, stalling with a trouble caller. Bastard, who can make G's faster than a newly remastered while being truly blasted.
But what gave Doom the upper hand over other rappers was his playful ability to incorporate melodies of older songs into his music, a technique used frequently by artists such as Grand Puba.
I get no kick from champagne.
Mere alcohol doesn't thrill me at all.
So tell me, why should it be true?
I get a kick out of groove.
Each technique gave Doom's music a loose, improvised feel, but was only the result of years of study and implementation. Likewise, Parker paid homage to older jazz pieces through the use of contrafacts. In today's language, a more apropos term for contrafact would be sample. Although it is not done in the same manner as beat makers pulling music from old records, the commonality is undeniable. In fact, much of the jazz created by artists of Parker's ilk was done by taking traditional jazz standards and employing subtle variations through improvisation to create a new genre of jazz altogether. Charlie Parker served as a linchpin which set off the cultural grenade that was bebop. Older jazz artists like Louis Armstrong dismissed it as a novelty, even referring to it as crazy music. And to a certain degree, Armstrong was right. No one played like Charlie Parker when Charlie Parker was trying to figure out how to play like Charlie Parker. That oddity drew audiences out to shows to see the jazz virtuoso and live in color. Like Doom, Although Parker's style of jazz felt improvised, it was only because of numerous years of training, both alone and amongst the critique of fellow artists. Once he understood the basics, he could veer off course freely with absolute confidence because he knew when and where to get back on path. Even when it didn't make sense, it always ended up making sense in the greater context of the music. Talib Kweli, a fellow New York lyricist and Doom collaborator, termed Doom's particular style as non sequitur rap.
They were sort of two different spaces. MF Doom is like a non sequitur rapper. He's not really sticking to a subject. It's just about rhyme schemes and rhyme patterns. And as an MC, I know there's probably a lot of MCs in the building. If you're a fan of Doom, you're a fan of how he makes you jealous. He makes you wish that you thought to rhyme Terry Cloth Kangos with very soft mangoes. You'd be like, how did I not come up with that? You know what I'm saying?
West Side Gun, Earl Sweatshirt, Rock Marciano, Capital Steez, Mos Def, Ghostface Killer. Each artist is played in this particular sandbox, influenced directly or indirectly by the supervillain himself. To the untrained ear, it sounds random, but when you sit down and study his lyricism, you get an idea of the picture Doom is painting in his mind.
I had my brother send me MF Doom lyrics and shit. And I just read them shits. When you read the shit, you really can see his whole vision for what he was doing. Yeah.
While everyone may not understand the value of an artist like Doom, the people who get it truly get it, leaving very little room for fair weather fans to exist, because whether we're talking about bebop or non sequitur rap, the end result is indisputable. Parker and Doom were able to create an entire universe using their mouths. Unlike guys like Madlib, I've never been much of a jazz aficionado, but I've always been a fan of underground hip-hop. However, I wasn't a fan of Doom the first time I heard Doomsday back in 2004. Why would I listen to a grown man in a Halloween mask, I thought? It seemed like a novelty. It seemed kind of crazy. Until I sat down with Doom's music one day and truly listened. The mask was never the focal point of his music. I made it that. It was merely a doorway to a treasure trove, a gateway to entice the curiosity of listeners, as well as a barrier to hide his metaphysical scars. In a world where extravagance is almost a prerequisite, who would think that a guy in a metal mask would be the most nuanced? Charlie Parker didn't come out of hiding wearing a physical mask like Doom. His was more of an idea. It was the novelty of his particular take on jazz music. At a time when swing was the rage, Parker helped pave a path for jazz music that you didn't need to get up and dance to, but could simply sit down and live in, if you could get past the spectacle of it. Likewise, when hip-hop began moving toward a more commercial, southern bounce-driven sound in the late 90s, Doom stayed in his lane, crafting off-kilter, pop culture-laden, 70s Saturday morning cartoon-inspired music that asks nothing more of the listener than to simply sit down and live in it, if they could get past the spectacle. The common thread Charlie Parker and MF Doom shared was the knowledge that while novelty may grab an audience's attention, it won't guarantee your audience retention. If music is a treasure chest, then the ability to break ground, create new sounds, and inspire new generations of artists is the treasure inside. But no matter the genre, it's developing and perfecting one's artistry that's always the key.
Now, I want to go back to talking about aliases and fictional characters and being elusive and why you felt the need to put some distance between yourself and the music business. And one person who's exemplified that more than anybody is a brother to both of us that we just recently lost in the physical. He's still with us in the spiritual. That's the brother, MF Doom. You've compared Doom to Charlie Parker. You've compared Dilla to Coltrane. You've compared yourself to Thelonious Monk.
If you've reached the end of the video by now, thanks for watching. You could have been doing anything else with your time, but you stayed and I appreciate that. This one ran a little bit longer than I initially intended. However, the more research I did on Charlie Parker and Doom, the more commonalities I found, I felt it was only right to put them in the video to give a better perspective on my perspective. More videos coming in the near future. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button if you like what you saw. Thanks for watching again, and have a good day.